Welcome to a Community Partners interview where we explore the organization's opportunities and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Sean Pickard, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Matt Greenwood, the Executive Director of Soccability. Soccability Canada is a nonprofit organization founded in 2020 with a mission to make soccer accessible to individuals of all abilities. Guided by a dedicated volunteer board, they are committed to breaking down barriers and ensuring everyone has the opportunity to play soccer in their community and explore further opportunities with the sport. Thank you for joining us today, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show, Sean.
Oh, there's a lot of things we need to go through, and there's a lot of folks out there. Soccer, big, football to a lot of people, huge following in this world. So before we get into Soccability here, Matt, tell us a little bit more about the Matt Greenwood experience. What inspired you to create Soccability, and why work with individuals with disabilities?
Okay, great question. Probably started probably over a decade ago. I've sort of bounced around between coaching in the UK, the US, and for the last 15 years or so here in Canada. Jumping back to sort of late 99, 2000, I was working in the US and really impressed and amazed by the equity of male and female players on the field. There wasn't sort of the male dominance that I was used to in the UK. And so when I moved back to the UK, the Football Association, which is the governing body of soccer in England, was being really proactive on their sort of social agenda, trying to encourage more females to play the sport, more coaches, more referees. And that really evolved through the Football Association to other areas of the game. So they really focused, and probably were one of the first organizations really heading up that equity, diversity, inclusion sort of agenda. And so I've had the great opportunity of developing some female programs and leagues in the UK. They just started to get into disability soccer and building the pathways for different streams of player. And then I emigrated to Canada and was pleasantly surprised by the equity of male and female players for the most part. But really, the other areas of the game are woefully behind and have still been quite behind for a long time now. So I've been backwards and forwards with Canada Soccer, with Special Olympics Canada, with a variety of other organizations trying to promote and get more involved in different soccer streams. And in 2020, I think as many people kind of in the thick of the pandemic felt that they needed to make a change and kind of stop procrastinating, I decided to put together Soccability Canada as a federally incorporated not-for-profit and really sort of put a stake in the ground to say, all right, we've done a lot of talking. We know that there's interest out there, but now let's start to formalize this and really meaningfully grow the game of soccer in Canada.
And that's a huge thing to see the equity, but no, there's still a little bit of room to move in there. That is... It takes a very, what's the word I'm looking for here? A big picture sense to do. You find out what you need to do.
Yeah, and I think that came a lot from what I was seeing in England. Sorry, just repeat that last question again, Sean. I just missed the end of it.
When it comes to that big picture kind of things, it gives you the opportunity to see lots of stuff on the go and focus on where you should need to go. So let's talk about some of those programs. For instance, I see on your website, you've got something called the Grassroots Program. How do you fill those little holes from the big picture?
Yeah, that's a great one. I think one of the things, or two of the things that I really leverage is that we already have a pretty good soccer system and soccer pathway in Canada. It's definitely got better over the last 10 years. So there's a framework there to add to. It's not like we're having to reinvent the wheel. We're really just kind of shifting people's focus. The other thing which I love about the para sport environment is this sort of culture of sharing. It's not like I've got the great idea and I want to keep it a secret and nobody else is going to come along with me. There's a real sense of collaboration. So if I can see that they're doing something great in Japan or Brazil or Holland or the UK, I reach out to somebody, shoot an email, and we share those ideas and learnings so that we can help ultimately, whether it's Soccability Canada or the clubs and the programs across the country, we can help move that needle forward. So one of the first things that we've really had to do with the grassroots clubs is let them know not to overthink it. not to think that they're going to run a program at the grassroots community level for players with a visual impairment or amputee soccer players. Like if they try to do that and find, it's a real niche player to find. So we sort of describe it as pan disability. So in its first instance at the grassroots, just open it as a very broad, accessible program, and you're going to get a range of different players with different needs, different ages on the field, and see where you go from there. Then that might move into a specific stream. For example, there may be some communities that are more aligned with a Special Olympics philosophy and moving their program in that direction. Others may find that they have a larger number of blind or visually impaired players, and they sort of start to lean in that way. But fundamentally, at the grassroots level, it's reassuring club leadership, typically a board or the general manager, that this is something that it's good to do, it's the right thing to do, and it's really properly serving your community, not just the people that know soccer and come through the door, but being proactive, reaching out to understand where the gaps, who are the people that aren't coming in your door. And a lot of times it's people with a disability that don't feel comfortable coming onto the field. So we train the grassroots clubs in providing that positive, enjoyable experience that will make players and the families want to come back for more.
That sounds like quite an incredible little program. So it's a network, really, an international network of how to get people into the sport and how to grow it.
Absolutely. Network's a great way to describe it. So when I sort of first really got into this from a Canadian perspective, I could see little sparks of light that were happening in different communities, Fergus, Allura in Ontario, Unionville, Pickering, communities in Ottawa, then out in BC and Alberta. Like there were people doing these things almost sort of in isolation, that somebody in their club or their community got it, realized this was something cool that needs to be on offer as part of the club programming, but it was very much in isolation. So we started to join those dots together. And that was really sort of the first semblance, was a mailing list of clubs to say, you're all doing something similar. Let's start networking and sharing ideas. And that really was the first step to then make something formal in Soccability Canada, where we have a forum every 3 months where clubs can jump on the line. It's not mandatory, but if they want, they've got questions, particularly coming out of the pandemic, there were questions about, well, what does your session look like, or what are the restrictions where you're operating? So clubs peer-to-peer can share their experiences and their learnings. And so that's been huge. I would say probably over the last decade, nationally, it's grown from about 19 or 20 club programs to about 60 now across the country. And not all of those have been launched or assisted by Soccability Canada, but what's been really cool is we've been able to uncover some great programs that are happening in Quebec. There's a whole glut of programs around the Montreal area that we just weren't aware of. So it's been cool to see this evolution of the network.
It's really cool when you find those little spots where you can pick up more pieces of the network, and people think they've been doing it for themselves for a long time. That is really cool. Now, let's talk about becoming a member of Soccability. Someone wants to join the team in their town, or they're just trying to find a path forward.
Mm-hmm.
How would someone go about joining Soccability? What's the process?
That's a great question. So as a sort of membership, we don't sort of formally do that. What we do is connect people with their local community club. So it may be a club that know that they want to start a program, they just don't know where to start. So we'll jump in. We've got a couple of instructors, sort of learning facilitators, that can come in and offer a 3 or a 6 hour workshop and leave the club with a sort of a starter pack with a variety of balls and cones and equipment to get them started. But really the purpose of the workshop is to put people's minds at ease about what these sessions will look like. We find a lot of times people overthink it, and then they jump to a risk management, and then they don't want to say the wrong thing, and they worry about hurting somebody. And from our perspective, it's worse that you go down that route and do nothing. Better that you at least try to offer something, and use our advice to help get something started, and then grow with it. So if we know that there's somebody, and we often get an email from a parent to say, look, my kid loves soccer, but there's nothing around. So our first question is, where are you? And then we'll identify where that local club is that is already offering a program. And if there isn't, we'll connect with the local club and lean on them to see if we can get them to start a program. Hopefully, with the best of intentions, they'll see the value in that and want to start an accessible soccer program.
Well, how many times do you get people that are interested in an accessible soccer program? You get a couple people in one area, but there's no local team, there's no local club.
Yes.
What do you do for those folks?
So it sort of comes in waves. So I would hazard a guess off the back of this interview, I'm probably going to get 5 or 6 emails or calls from parents to say, hey, I heard this. We want to know where we can get involved. And then we'll connect them with that local club. We're very realistic when we talk to clubs that you're going to start a program, you're going to open the doors, and you're most likely not going to get overwhelmed with 10, 20, 30 kids or even youth or adults that want to get into disability soccer. It may only be a couple, but at least to start with that is a starting point. One of the great examples we often share is at the Pickard Football Club, where they started a program back in 2007. The first week they had 3 kids, and then for the next couple of weeks it went down to 1. And I'm sure the coaches at that time were sort of scratching their heads thinking, maybe we tried and this didn't really go where we wanted it to go. The reality of that program now is that they're at about 80 kids in the summer and around 60 or 70 in the indoor season. So it's a long, slow burn, long-term gain, sort of patience to grow to get those numbers up. What we commonly find is that one club might really jump in and thrive with it and things happen. And then the clubs around it say, you know what, we're just going to signpost everybody to your club and point them in the direction. So some clubs almost become a hub with more players, and the other clubs around it sort of signposting them to that bigger program. Ideally, we would love for every club to have a program because fundamentally, mom and dad driving their kid to a program would love to have that program in their own neighborhood, in their own community, not be trekking 10, 15, 20 kilometers to find that accessible soccer program.
And that can be a drive at times. They are not everywhere. And speaking of things like that, let's talk a little bit about restrictions, Matt. I know we've talked a little bit about equality. We've got the male, female, some folks doing an amputee game or visually impaired game. Let's talk about those restrictions. Is it all set up where it's all visually impaired on the same field at the same time? How do you work any of that?
Yeah, no, that's one of the most fascinating, I think, parts of the game, sort of disability soccer in all its streams. At the grassroots level, as I said, we sort of talk about pan disability. To a range of different needs. We might have kids that are hearing impaired. We may have a player or two that's using a walker. But at that level, they're fine being on the field together. The 2 areas that we sort of, and it's really from a safety restriction, would be our blind or visually impaired athletes need to know that they're on the field, maybe just with a coach or 2 in isolation, not mixing with other players, simply because the other players won't be thinking about the fact that somebody with eye shades on playing blind soccer is running at full speed is going to hurt somebody. They're going to cause some damage to another player on the field that might not be thinking that way and recognizing what's going on. And the other one would be around power chair soccer. So power chair soccer is played on a hard court, sort of similar dimensions to a basketball court area. And obviously the risk of a power chair going over somebody's foot could be pretty catastrophic. So power chair soccer and blind soccer would be the 2 that would commonly sort of train and practice on their own with their own space. But for most other needs, we see a lot of success with that sort of pan disability piece, particularly at the grassroots level. It's as much about soccer as it is about the fun and the friendship that they're going to make connecting with other people on the field, whether it's other players or the coaches that are assisting them. So those are sort of the main two restrictions when it comes to sort of playing format. As the players move up into more competitive levels, and part of what Soccability Canada is working on is those pathways. So if I'm a kid with a hearing impairment, I could start in my grassroots club and get a really fun, positive experience. But if I show some talent and I might be able to go to a regional or provincial or national level, that's what we'd like to work towards and build in place. Right now, Special Olympics Canada is probably the best example of that pathway, from kids at the grassroots community chapter up to an international level. But the other streams, sort of defined streams of disability soccer, those are where we need to work on building.
So I just want to make sure I'm covering this here, because it sounds like you've really got two platforms, one competitive and one recreational, and then down between the competitive and recreational, it's you will train with folks that are, say, visually impaired or using a wheelchair, but for the most part, it's everyone on the field at the same time. What about age? Do you break it up according to age?
We do it if it's a bigger program and the numbers are there to do that. Then yes, we would break it down by age. So I know there are some clubs that will run a sort of a junior program from 5 till 12, and then a senior program 13 plus or 13 to 18. One of the clubs, Fergus Allura District Soccer Club, out sort of the southwestern side of Ontario, has a huge adult program, and I'm regularly challenged by their head coach to say, Matt, we've got a whole bunch of adults here that are playing. We want to play other adult teams. And that's another challenge and something we're looking to build. Most club programs are children and youth. When it comes to disability soccer, they don't have that adult component. So that's kind of another cool challenge, is how do we ensure that more adults stay in the game playing, or that we're able to introduce it to adults that may just have not had an opportunity or an experience during their time at school. But you're absolutely right. To come back to your first point, the recreational and competitive, and a lot of what we talk about with the clubs is, again, you have these systems in place. You have coaches, you have referees, you have field time, you have recreational soccer, which is really fun and get people into the system to enjoy it. And then competitive, which is, a bit more involvement. Now there's a training day and a game. There's proper uniforms. It becomes a bit more serious. And again, every club has those programs. We're just ensuring that accessible component is included as well.
That is awesome. I'm very happy to hear that, Matt. Now, this next question, I think I want to break it down into two different directions here. Let's talk about an individual and let's talk about a club. So, without using any names, let's not give anyone away here, Matt. Can you share a system in the right direction?
Sorry, that last bit of the question I missed.
Did I go get a Zoom remix there?
I think it must have done.
Without using any names, Matt, can you share a success story with me? What happened when someone, either an individual, and then let's talk again about a club, what happened when they came to you and asked for help? What happened? Like, what was put into place that made everything turn out well?
Right. Okay. Off the top of my head, I have a wonderful example that I think about quite a lot right now. And I'll build to the climax. So 2015, 2016, I had a young female player reach out to me. I was actually in a different role at the time. She played competitive soccer and had just been diagnosed with a visual impairment which she knew was going to deteriorate her eyesight to the point where she would be legally blind. And being as proactive and organized as she was, she wanted to make a plan. What was that going to look like, and what were the options going to be for her to continue playing competitive soccer? And at the time, I'll be honest with you, 2016, I didn't have an answer to her. I knew that blind soccer existed globally. I knew that we didn't have anything in Canada. And rather frustratingly, we'd just come out at the back of the 2015 Toronto Para-Pan Am Games, where the only sport that Canada didn't have representation was in blind soccer. So it was kind of a tough conversation to have with her, but I encouraged her to, keep pushing, asking questions, by all means bugging me if she wasn't seeing any movement. And time moved on. She went on and did some high level degrees. Came back to Canada in the last 18 months, 2 years, and during that time, I'd been chipping away at some conversations with Canada Soccer and with Canadian Blind Sport Association. We'd made some good groundwork in offering a provincial parasport games in Ontario that included blind soccer and has been in the game since 2017. We'd also been able to launch a first ever residential blind soccer program at the CNIB facility in Lake Joseph in Ontario. So we'd made some really great steps. Players had started to come out of the woodwork. Then the pandemic hit, and I was really concerned that a lot of these players would be lost and decide not to come back. What was bizarre was that coming out of the pandemic, most of the players that had been with us pre-pandemic didn't come back, but a whole new audience of players came through that I'd never met before, and it was wonderful to see them come on the field. So fast forward to about 2023, the young female player that I'd spoken to back in 2016 now jumped into the program, is actually now our first women's national team captain for our female blind soccer team. And we're now working towards taking the first ever female team to India in October for the IPSA World Championships. So, it's a wonderful story when I think back on the fact that 8 years ago, I didn't really know what we could offer or what was out there. And that sort of really solidified my direction, my motivation to build that system. And it's not perfect. We're very early on in developing a national program, but just yesterday, March 6th, Canada Soccer announced formally that they were going to oversee blind soccer in Canada in partnership, in collaboration with Soccability Canada. So they really help with the sanctioning and the affiliation of our program. And through Soccability Canada, we're busy out recruiting, trying to find new players, both male and female, that can compete ideally at the national and the international level. So that's probably one of the kind of the success stories that I'm most proud of.
That is an awesome story. I like that one. That's excellent. The captain. All right. Now, what's the one thing you see happening over and over again to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be, Matt? And how do we stop it? I'm sure there's a lot going on in the world of soccer.
Oh, that's a really great question. I think the one that kind of pulls at the heartstrings the most, and I think it's more because it hurts me, and I think it hurts some of the players, is that we get people really interested, enthused, excited about the concept of disability soccer. It's fascinating when you come from the world of soccer and you learn some of the nuances that exist in disability soccer. For example, in power chair soccer, on the team you've got the head coach and the assistant coach, but you've also got a mechanic. And no other soccer team has a mechanic, but they have to have a guy or a girl there that can tweak a power chair, that can change a battery, that can fix a bumper. So there's all sorts of cool things that are slightly different within the different disability soccer streams. And when we present on this in workshops, people get really engaged and fascinated by it. The challenge then is, how do we keep them in for the long term? And it's really having coaches understand that this is a slow burn. It's not going to be an overnight, success with tens and tens of players coming to your programs and moving players through to other competitive levels of the game. It may just be that you're running a program in a gym or on a turf for months and for years on time, but you're doing something really, really good, and bringing these players and ensuring that they've got a safe place to play and learn is huge. And so we start off with people that are very keen to get involved, but maybe last a season, maybe last a couple of months. And from my perspective, that long-term piece is really, really huge, because then you start to build that trust in your coaches and your network, that when you share ideas, you share opportunities for fundraising or for programming, that these people they're bought in, they're all in with supporting you and building that network. And the players get attached to certain coaches as well and certain leaders, and they build that chemistry. And I think sometimes when people leave a program as a leader, whether it's as a coach or a program coordinator, they underestimate that sort of ripple effect and that feeling that the players and I have a sort of loss of them kind of jumping out of the program. So I think that'd probably be probably one of sort of the toughest things. Yeah.
That is an excellent answer there, Matt. Thank you for that one. Now, there are tournaments everywhere. Doesn't matter what sport you play, soccer, hockey, baseball, there's a tournament. Somebody's got to get in the car, go somewhere, do something. Are there any major tournaments for Soccability coming up? Where can people go catch a game, possibly?
There are, I guess, a couple of options. One that we're working on more specifically in Ontario right now, but we tested it last year. This year will be an evolution, and hopefully this can be something that could go nationwide. So in partnership with the Provincial Soccer Association, we were able to piggyback onto what they call their summer festivals. So grassroots clubs typically will offer a festival, whether it's recreational players or competitive, usually up to about 12 years of age. They all descend on a sort of a field complex and play a whole bunch of games. And it's a lot to do with, again, fun in the sun, enjoying that connective. There might be inflatables or an ice cream van or that kind of environment. And so we were able to push 3 clubs last year to jump on board and actually do an accessible festival as well. So 3 clubs in Ontario that we knew already ran an accessible soccer program, open that out to other accessible programs across the province to come along and participate. Because I think that's the next step. As you said, there's competition everywhere, but historically, when it comes to accessible soccer programming, I think sometimes the organizers or the coaches or the clubs are a little bit nervous about, do we want to go and play another club, or are we going to be able to get the parents buy-in? And again, I just liken it to every other version of soccer and why people get involved in the sport. It's for that fun and that sense of competition and connection. So why wouldn't an accessible program want to go and play the club down the road and build up a bit of a rivalry and kind of that, expand that network? So this year we're hoping to run a festival one in May, one in June, one in July, and one in August, so that there'll be a range of accessible competitions. A club might not be able to get to all 4 of them, but maybe they can just get to one of them, nearer to them. But that will then start to build sort of competition, but in a really fun, enjoyable way. And then our plan would be to get the other provincial soccer associations on board with that concept and the clubs to start hosting their own. And I think there is interest in British Columbia for sure, to start doing something similar this year. And then at a higher level, there isn't too much nationally, other than sort of, as I said before, the Special Olympics pathway. They do have provincial championships, and those will be sort of province by province on the Special Olympics website. What we're doing this year, actually in late April, for only the second time, we'll be taking a blind soccer team to Colorado Springs to play in a competition against the US. Who else have we got there? US, Romania, and Honduras. So we took a team in 2023 and played against the US, the first time ever that a Canadian blind soccer team and a US blind soccer team had played games. And that was a cool start, again, putting a stake in the ground. Now we've evolved it to this point where they're hosting us as part of a 4-team tournament. And this is just continuing to seek out those competitive opportunities. The great thing when it comes to the internet and accessibility is that these games are typically live streamed now with a commentator. So Even if it's tournaments that I'm not able to get to, I can have them on YouTube and playing in the background, and I can listen in on the action and learn and see what's going on in other parts of the world.
It's amazing how connected we are these days. Now, we're running out of time here, Matt, so before we get going, if folks are looking for more information, if the listeners want to be able to reach out to someone, how do they get a hold of you or Soccability? What's the email, phone number, things of that nature?
Okay. The email address is www.soccability.ca, and I'll spell that out because it's a bit of a funky word. It's SOCCABILITY, soccability.ca. And our email address is on there, which is inquiries@soccability.ca. And that will come through to me, and we're more than happy to chat to families about finding a local club. If there are sponsors out there that are interested in supporting either a local club program or even something like the blind soccer team or development of other programs, there's so many opportunities out there. The area that we haven't got into yet is match officials and what referees look like for each of these sports. We've started a little bit with blind soccer, but in due course, once we start to grow that network and that family, we'll start to need to look at match officials as well. But really, if there's any questions, we love to know what people are up to, if there are programs that we're not aware of. Again, that sense of collaboration. We do on that website have a Google Earth map, which people can click on, zoom in, and it will show them the exact address of the local club programs across Canada. So it's a great way for people to find a local program. And if it's a club that's listening to this that doesn't see themselves on the map, absolutely send us an email because we need to get you on there. And we provide a link on there. So if it's a family that's navigating a local program, they can click straight through to an organizer's accessible page and find out more about the program. And then we're also on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. What I will say is we try to avoid posting and sharing stuff that is, what's the word? I'm going to say sort of fluff, for want of a better word. There's some great stories out there, but what we really try to do is connect people with some of the more meaningful content. If there are guides out there or strategies or stories that might resonate to help people start a program or grow a program, we're constantly on the lookout for those types of stories that we can share and amplify.
It's great to hear those stories are available on social media. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, Matt. So if you'd like to say goodbye to the folks at home.
Goodbye, everybody, and thanks very much for having me.
And that's all the time we have for today, folks. I'm Sean Pickard. Until next time, bye for now.